Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Are Irish bards just built different? Well, Dag Eve agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. It's Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School here. And this is an interesting one because I refer to myself as a bard in ancient Irish tradition of honoring story and memory and telling people about the tales of our old culture. Um, but there are records from our medieval past which give specific details which make me wonder, are birds actually built biologically different in some way? And so the most commonly well known is, of course, references to the bird's tongue. We have it now down through time that, some people might be referred to as sharp-tongued or silver-tongued in some way, shape, or form. And that usually is about the nature of their speech, the way they're able to communicate and the way they're able to articulate, but then also what they communicate and articulate. But medieval records do talk about bard tongues being specifically agile or sharp. What is also very fascinating about the tongue of the bard is that there are information that talk about very specific things that exist on bard tongues as opposed to other tongues. And one is a soft tuft, which is said to be in around the tip of the tongue, which indicates the praise poetry. But then the other is that there is a bag of poison somewhere beneath the tongue in the mouth, which is to indicate satire. So the ancient Irish society had words for this. It was mulla agus air, and the mulla was the praise poetry and air was the satire poetry. And satire wasn't just taking the mick out of someone or kind of degrading someone with poetry or prose. And in fact, praise poetry wasn't just telling someone that they're great. There were actual legal structures around the use of mulla agus air. They were recognized in the Brehon laws as something to be very much taken seriously. Because if someone had a legal satire placed against their name by a bard, that could have significant impact on their rights and society within the structured society of medieval Ireland. So much so that kings could be toppled by simple use of satire. The satire would have to be just. The king would have to be warned that they're going to have a legal satire placed against them. And if they don't make recompense for the harm, the damage, the insult, or whatever they have done, then the bard would go ahead and perform their satire publicly. They would state for the record that this is the nature or this is the true character of what has happened with that individual. Most famously in the mythological cycle of Ireland, when we're talking about the Tuatha Danann king Bres is abusing his Tuatha Danann tribe members in favor of his Fomorian ancestry. But for all of he is acting disfavorably, for all that he's heavily taxing his people, for all that he's not looking after the proper relationship between his tribe and the island and the other world, it's actually the satire of a poet by the name of Capra who topples Bres. So Bres proves gives false judgment. Bres proves that he is not favoring his people or dealing with the job of a king properly, because a king wasn't just an entitled circumstance of birth. It was a job. You had a serious number of requirements upon you to be king in Ireland. I've done a class on that as well. But when it comes to the bards, the satire structure was such that anyone could be satirized, and Bres proves a lack of hospitality to this one particular bird, Capra. And when Capra warns him, listen, you have not taken care of us, you've not dealt with me in line with the laws of hospitality in our country, I'll have to perform a satire poem against you for such, unless you make it right. And Bres completely disregards him entirely, puts him off in a shed, doesn't kind of bring him in, doesn't kind of treat him the way a kingly person is supposed to treat someone coming looking for hospitality. They're supposed to be sat, at table, fed what you're fed, treated like family for that one night, day and night. Instead, Capra is put in a separate shed, given a rough blanket to sleep on, some dry cakes, and some water to drink, not even some meat or some milk. So Capra performs his satire. He publicly denounces Bres for there is no hospitality in the house of Bres. And this is the final coffin nail for Bres. He is deemed then not fit to be king in Ireland because of satire. And so this idea that bards being built differently, there is something around their tongue, there's something in the biology of a bard, which means that they articulate differently or they can smooth away the hurt or the harms by their praise poetry. They can elevate, they can raise someone's status, they can raise someone's feelings and experiences of something with their poetry, with their performances, or with their storytelling. It wasn't all about poems. That was the soft, that was the praise, but then also the cutting side of it could be this air, the satire. One of the other things I found when I was exploring this, what is it that makes a bard? There's another biological thing about bards, and that is referred to as the vein of poetry. It was said that bards specifically are born with a vein of poetry in them. And it does give a location for the vein of poetry. It is said to be in the back of the head. It is in at the back by the brain because it said the dark part of the body which the eyes do not see or perceive. And so it's from this vein of poetry in the back of the head that everything flows, that all of the information, inspiration, and everything would flow from the bard. And that's why we have many stories of Fila, which is the top level of skill and talent, the recognized status, the upper status of bard is a Fila. They're considered surnamed. They're on the same social status as kings and druids and chieftains. But Fila were said to lie on their back in dark huts to put their head on the back on the ground in darkness while they were engaging in their compositions, so that they would be lying heavily upon the vein of poetry in darkness, surrounded by darkness, because it is that place where the eye does not see. I find this one particularly fascinating because when we look at other forms of narratives and practices, when we look at Druidic practices about meditations or journey work or inspiration work, a lot of it is about going into dark places, going into caves and seeking internally of yourself the truth of your own nature, the truth of your own shadow side, or then your connection with deity or the other world, or in the bard's case, Imbos, which is this collective central source of wisdom and knowledge and understanding. And so it's said then that there is this vein of poetry that exists within the back of a bard's, specifically a bard's skull, that allows them to access it. In fact, the poet's body, the bard's body, all of the body, is said to run differently in that the seat of emotion and intellect is actually the heart. Instead of intellect being seated in the brain, where we would expect it to be in bards, it's seated in the heart. And so all of the blood flow and all of the information runs from the heart, carries up through the vein of poetry. And that's where the inspiration comes down across the tongue, breathed out by the lungs into the world as words. And those words, be they praise or satire, are the words that define reality and change things or recall to people and remind people of their true nature and culture. So, are bards built differently? The answer, not hard to say. Maybe they actually are built differently. We have other stories from the medieval period where there's a large kind of conflict. It's a battle between two rival tribes, at the end of which the chieftain who is victorious is like, we need some entertainment. And he says, go out there onto the battlefield and find me the head of a bard and bring it in. And so his warriors do. They go out, they cut off the head of a particularly famous bard from the other tribe, they bring it in and they put it up on a pedestal, at which point the head begins to perform. It begins to talk and tell the stories, recall to them the memories, the lineages, the names and places all around them. And the chieftain is so delighted by the performance of this decapitated head that he calls for his druid to magically restore the entire body of the bard. And that is how this particular narrative works out for this one bard. So, It is a very fascinating topic. It is something that I have studied a lot and I really dug into. When I asked that question of myself about being a bard, I had to know what it was to be a bard. Is it just because of lineage, because of birth? There are some families which are said to have direct lineages of bards. There's always a bard in every generation of a particular family. So whether that is some biological component that comes down through a bloodline or a performance or a vein of poetry that exists somewhere in the darkness of the mind? Or is it culture? Is it training? Is it the status in which they existed within medieval Irish society? There is so much to explore and so much to know about the importance of bards to ancient medieval Ireland. And so, ancient and medieval Ireland, in fact. If you'd like to know more, I have a class on it. It's available. You can click the link down below. If you can't take a class now, that's totally fine. All you gotta do is click the other link below and take something for free. Go to irishpagan.school/free. We have loads more resources available for you there. Until next time, look after yourself. Take care. Agus Slán. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.